Family dynamics can be a roller coaster of emotions, especially when a sibling decides to meddle in your love life. In Sister's wild plot to wreck my marriage, forcing things to patch up with my ex, I recount the tumultuous journey of dealing with my sister's relentless attempts to reunite me with my ex, culminating in a series of outrageous schemes that tested my patience, trust, and resilience. From forced reconciliations to fake cheating photos, this story is a testament to the chaos that can ensue when familial love turns into misguided interference. Have you ever found yourself in this kind of sticky situation? Or maybe you've faced some wild and outrageous accusations in the past? Oh, we definitely want to hear that juicy story. So, let's dive into it. But hey, before we get started, don't forget to click that follow button below to stay updated with our latest, most scandalous stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss them. 1. Years of forced reconciliation with my ex. After confronting Maggie and establishing my boundaries, I thought the saga with Tom was finally over. Yet, just when I began to relax and breathe easy, life threw another curveball my way. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. Assuming it was one of those annoying telemarketers, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me compelled me to answer. Hello? I greeted cautiously. Hi, is this Rachel? A deep, unfamiliar voice asked. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? I replied, my curiosity piqued. This is Detective Harris from the City Police Department. I'm calling in regard to Tom Nash. We need to ask you a few questions. My heart skipped a beat. Tom? The police? I quickly agreed to meet with Detective Harris, trying to suppress the flood of dread filling my veins. At the station, Detective Harris informed me that Tom had disappeared under suspicious circumstances. His phone, wallet, and keys were found in his apartment, all untouched. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry. We understand you and Tom have a bit of history, he said, his gaze unwavering. Yes, but we've been broken up for years, I retorted, eager to distance myself from any involvement. Still, we need to cover all our bases. Did Tom mention anything unusual to you recently? Anyone who might want to harm him? Detective Harris asked. I shook my head, a sense of foreboding sinking in. No, I haven't spoken to him in months, and even then, it was just polite small talk. As the detective continued to probe, a sinking realization hit me: Maggie. Maggie had been the catalyst behind all our recent encounters. Maybe she remembered something I didn't or had stumbled upon some sordid detail. After all, she had always believed she knew what was best for everyone. I called Maggie as soon as I left the station. I need to talk to you. Now. Within an hour, Maggie met me at our favorite coffee shop. Her normally cheerful expression turned solemn upon seeing my face. What's wrong, Rachel? I relayed everything Detective Harris had told me. Maggie's eyes widened with each word. Tom's missing? But, how? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I need to know if there's anything you haven't told me about him. Anything at all. Maggie seemed genuinely stunned, but then her face clouded over, and she glanced around nervously. Well, there was one thing. About a month ago, Tom confided in me that he thought someone was following him. He didn't go into specifics, but he seemed really paranoid. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my frustration mounting. I didn't want to worry you, Maggie pleaded. You were finally moving on. Besides, I thought it was just Tom being dramatic. We decided to pass this new information on to Detective Harris. However, Maggie's revelation also stirred something inside me, a peculiar sense of responsibility. Despite all the years apart, Tom had once been a significant part of my life. If he was in danger, I couldn't just turn my back. Determined to uncover the truth, I dove into Tom's social media, searching for anything out of the ordinary. I noticed a pattern of cryptic posts, pictures of places that held no apparent meaning to me but might be clues indicating where he spent his time. Among the comments, I saw the name Ava pop up repeatedly, a woman I didn't recognize. Driven by intuition, I tracked down Ava via her public social media profile and sent her a message, explaining who I was and why I needed to talk. To my surprise, she responded promptly, agreeing to meet. Ava turned out to be a colleague of Tom, someone he'd become close with over the past few months. She seemed nervous as we talked, glancing over her shoulder more times than I could count. Tom was into something serious, she admitted in a hushed tone. He mentioned uncovering some corruption at work, something big. He was gathering evidence and planned to go public. My mind raced. This was bigger than any personal or familial drama. Tom had stumbled into something dangerous, and his paranoia about being followed suddenly made sense. Before leaving, Ava handed me a small USB drive. Tom gave this to me for safekeeping. He said if anything happened to him, someone trustworthy should have it. Back at the station, Detective Harris plugged the USB drive into his computer. Immediately, dozens of documents and spreadsheets popped up, detailing a complex web of illicit activities implicating several high-ranking officials at Tom's company. It was a game-changer. The information provided substantial leads for the police. The following week saw a series of dramatic arrests and media blitzes as the scandal unraveled, revealing a network of corporate fraud and embezzlement. Amid the upheaval, Tom was found. He'd been hiding in plain sight, leveraging the chaos he'd helped create. When the dust finally settled, Tom reached out to me, thanking me for believing in him when few did. Maggie, for once, had no words. Her meddling had inadvertently drawn me into a whirlwind of danger and intrigue, but through it, I rediscovered my own strength and resilience. As for me, well, life had certainly taken an unexpected turn. Amidst the chaos, I realized that sometimes, even the most inconvenient paths lead us exactly where we need to be. As for Maggie, we shared a newfound respect, a silent agreement to let life unfold without interference. And somewhere along the way, amidst the scandal and danger, Tom and I forged a cautious, tentative friendship, proving that even the most unwelcome matchmaking attempts could have silver linings. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories. Thank you. 2. How my sister tricked me into sharing a room with my ex. Weddings. The joyous occasion where two souls unite in holy matrimony, and where my sister decided to play Cupid with a side of chaos. Picture this, a picturesque venue, a sea of white roses, and a room assignment that would make even Shakespeare's comedies look like a walk in the park. It all started innocently enough. My sister, let's call her Mischief Maven, was in charge of the wedding accommodations. She assured me that everything was under control. Don't worry, she said with a grin that could rival the Cheshire Cat's, I've got the perfect room for you. Fast forward to the night before the wedding. I arrived at the hotel, luggage in tow, ready to relax and mentally prepare for the big day. I approached the front desk, gave my name, and waited for the key to my sanctuary. The receptionist handed me a key card with a knowing smile. Room 314, she said, enjoy your stay. I made my way to the room, opened the door, and there he was. My ex. The one I had spent years trying to avoid, the one my sister had been relentlessly trying to push back into my life. He looked as surprised as I felt, standing there with a toothbrush in hand and a look of utter confusion. Hi, he said, as if we were meeting at a coffee shop and not in a room that was supposed to be my escape from reality. Hi, I replied, my brain scrambling to process the situation. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, he said, setting down his toothbrush. This is my room. No, this is my room, I insisted, waving the key card like a white flag of surrender. We both turned to the door, where the room number was clearly displayed. 314, the same number on both of our key cards. It was then that the realization hit me like a ton of wedding favors. My sister had orchestrated this. She had somehow managed to convince the hotel staff to double book us, all in the name of her twisted matchmaking scheme. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number, my fingers tapping out a rhythm of frustration. She answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. Hey, sis. How's the room? How's the room? I echoed, my voice rising an octave. I'm sharing it with my ex. There was a pause, followed by a poorly stifled giggle. Oh, really? What a coincidence. Coincidence, my foot, I snapped. What are you playing at? Relax, she said, her tone annoyingly calm. I just thought it would be nice for you two to catch up. You know, for old time's sake. Old time's sake? I repeated, incredulous. This isn't a high school reunion, it's my wedding. Exactly, she said, as if that explained everything. And what better time to mend old wounds? I hung up, resisting the urge to throw my phone across the room. My ex, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, raised an eyebrow. So, what now? Now, I said, taking a deep breath, we find a way to survive this night without killing each other. We spent the next few hours in an awkward dance of avoidance, each of us claiming a corner of the room like territorial cats. I tried to focus on my wedding vows, but my sister's meddling kept creeping into my thoughts. How could she think this was a good idea? Did she really believe that forcing us into close quarters would rekindle some long-extinguished flame? As the night wore on, we eventually found ourselves sitting on opposite ends of the bed, a bottle of complimentary champagne between us. We talked, not about the past or the future, but about the absurdity of the situation. We laughed at the sheer audacity of my sister's plan, and for a moment, it felt like old times. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, reality set in. This was not a romantic comedy. This was my life, and I had a wedding to attend. The next morning, we parted ways with a mutual understanding. My ex moved to another room, and I prepared for my walk down the aisle. My sister, ever the mischief maker, watched with a satisfied smile as I exchanged vows with my fiancé. She may have tried to sabotage my wedding, but in the end, her shenanigans only made me more determined to embrace my future. And as for the room ruse? Well, let's just say it made for one heck of a wedding story. What I didn't expect, however, was that the room ruse was only the beginning. After a beautiful ceremony and an evening reception filled with laughter and dancing, I thought I was finally free from my sister's clever traps. But as I slipped away to change into my going-away outfit, I found a note slipped under the door of my new room: "Check your bridal suite, M." Curiosity got the better of me, and I headed up to the bridal suite, my footsteps echoing in the eerily quiet hallway. I opened the door to find it beautifully decorated with rose petals and candles. What really caught my eye, however, was a small safe propped open on the bed with documents spilling out. My heart raced as I picked up the top sheet. It was Tom's handwriting, notes on the corporate scandal that had seen him go into hiding. Detailed evidence that could bring down powerful figures, linking back to the very room I was supposed to be celebrating my new marriage in. At that moment, the door clicked open behind me. I spun around to find Tom standing there, a look of grim determination on his face. "We need to talk," he said. And I think Maggie might have just helped us more than she knows. Caught between the romantic beckoning of my new life and the dangerous intrigue of Tom's shadowy investigation, I realized that perhaps Mischief Maven's latest scheme would lead to more than just amusing anecdotes. She might have inadvertently placed us right on the trail of uncovering a conspiracy that could topple empires. "All right," I nodded, steeling myself for the adventure yet to come. "Tell me everything. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories." 3. The shocking moment my fiancé received phony cheating pics. Picture this: a serene Sunday morning, birds chirping, coffee brewing, and my fiancé, Tom, scrolling through his phone with a look that could curdle milk. I knew something was up when he turned to me, eyes wide, and said, "Care to explain these?" He thrust his phone in my face, and there they were, photos of me, in what appeared to be a passionate embrace with none other than my ex, Jake. Now, let me set the record straight. The last time I hugged Jake was at our high school graduation, and even then, it was more of a "congrats, we survived" pat on the back. So, seeing these photos was like being hit by a truckload of déjà vu and disbelief. Tom, bless his heart, was trying to keep his cool, but I could see the storm brewing behind his eyes. "Where did you get these?" I asked, my voice a mix of confusion and indignation. "An anonymous email," he replied, his tone as icy as a polar bear's toenails. With a subject line that read, "The truth about your fiancé." Ah, the classic anonymous email, because nothing says trustworthy source like a faceless digital messenger. I took a deep breath and examined the photos more closely. They were grainy, poorly lit, and had the unmistakable aura of a bad Photoshop job. But to someone who didn't know better, they could easily be mistaken for the real deal. Tom, these are fake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I haven't seen Jake in years. Someone is trying to mess with us. Tom's skepticism was palpable. And who would go to such lengths to do that? Cue the dramatic pause as the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My sister, Maggie. The same sister who had been orchestrating a series of increasingly ridiculous schemes to reunite me with Jake, as if our breakup had been some cosmic mistake that only she could rectify. Maggie had always been a bit of a meddler, but this was a new low. I could almost hear her cackling as she clicked send on that email, probably while twirling an imaginary mustache. Maggie, I said, my voice dripping with exasperation. It has to be Maggie. Tom raised an eyebrow. Your sister? Why would she do this? Because she has this delusional fantasy that Jake and I are meant to be together, I explained. She's been trying to sabotage our relationship for months. Tom sighed, rubbing his temples. So, what do we do now? First, we need to prove these photos are fake, I said, channeling my inner detective. And then, we confront Maggie. We spent the next few hours playing CSI, Relationship Edition. We scrutinized the photos, looking for inconsistencies. And boy, did we find them. In one photo, my supposed doppelganger was wearing a bracelet I had lost years ago. In another, Jake's face was awkwardly pasted onto a body that clearly wasn't his. It was like a bad episode of Catfish. Armed with our evidence, we called Maggie over for a little chat. She arrived, blissfully unaware of the storm she was about to walk into. Hey, sis, she chirped, all smiles. What's up? Cut the act, Maggie, I said, holding up Tom's phone. Care to explain these? Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might actually faint. But then, she recovered, her expression morphing into one of feigned innocence. I have no idea what you're talking about. Save it, Tom interjected. We know these photos are fake. And we know you're behind them. Maggie's facade crumbled faster than a cookie in milk. Okay, fine, she admitted, crossing her arms. I did it. But it was for your own good. For my own good? I echoed, incredulous. How was trying to ruin my relationship with Tom for my own good? Because Jake is your soulmate, she insisted, as if that explained everything. You two were perfect together, and I just wanted you to see that. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Maggie, Jake, and I broke up for a reason. And Tom is the one I want to be with. You need to accept that. Maggie looked like she was about to argue, but then she sighed, defeated. I just wanted you to be happy, she mumbled. Well, sabotaging my relationship isn't the way to do it, I said firmly. If you really care about my happiness, you'll support my choices. Maggie nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I won't interfere anymore. As she left, I turned to Tom, who looked relieved but still a bit shell-shocked. Well, that was something, he said. Yeah, I agreed, wrapping my arms around him. But at least now we know the truth. And with that, we put the fake photo fiasco behind us, ready to face whatever other shenanigans life or my sister might throw our way. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories. For unraveling my sister's devious plan. Picture this, a family dinner that starts with a polite clinking of glasses and ends with a dramatic showdown worthy of a soap opera. My sister, the self-appointed puppet master of my love life, had finally pushed one button too many. It was time to confront her, and boy, was I ready to channel my inner detective. The evening began innocently enough. My fiancé, Tom, and I were hosting a small gathering to celebrate our engagement. The air was thick with the aroma of roasted chicken and the tension of unresolved sibling rivalry. My sister, Maggie, sat across the table, her eyes darting around like a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. She knew something was up, and so did I. After the main course, I decided it was time to serve the main event, the confrontation. I cleared my throat, and the room fell silent. Maggie, I began, my voice steady but my heart racing like a caffeinated hamster on a wheel, we need to talk. Maggie's fork clattered onto her plate, and she looked at me with wide-eyed innocence that could have won her an Oscar. What about, she asked, her voice dripping with faux concern. I took a deep breath and launched into my opening statement. I know about the fake photos, the room switch, and the endless attempts to push me back into the arms of my ex. What I don't know is why. The room collectively gasped, and Maggie's face turned a shade of red that would make a tomato jealous. She stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, come on, Maggie, I said, my patience wearing thinner than a cheap paper napkin. The jig is up. Tom and I compared notes, and it all points back to you. The fake photos of me supposedly cheating? The mysterious room switch at the wedding? The constant accidental run-ins with my ex? It's all too convenient. Tom chimed in, his voice calm but firm. We found the original photos on your computer, Maggie. You photoshopped them to make it look like she was cheating. Why would you do that? Maggie's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. Finally, she sighed and slumped back in her chair. Fine, she muttered, you caught me. But I did it for you, sis. For me? I echoed, incredulous. How on earth is sabotaging my relationship doing anything for me? Maggie's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I thought you were making a mistake, she said, her voice cracking. I thought Tom wasn't right for you, and that you'd be happier with someone else. I wanted to protect you. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Protect me? By ruining my life? Maggie, that's not protection, that's manipulation. You don't get to decide who makes me happy. Maggie's tears flowed freely now, and she buried her face in her hands. I know, she sobbed. I didn't know how else to make you see. Tom reached across the table and took my hand, his touch grounding me in the midst of the emotional storm. Maggie, he said gently, we appreciate that you care about her, but this isn't the way to show it. You need to trust her to make her own decisions. Maggie looked up, her face a mess of mascara and regret. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I just wanted what was best for you. I sighed, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and a tiny sliver of understanding. Maggie, I love you, but you have to let me live my own life. If I make mistakes, they're mine to make. And if I find happiness, it's mine to cherish. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of the confrontation settling over us like a heavy blanket. Finally, Maggie nodded. I understand, she said quietly. I'll back off. I promise. As the evening wound down, the tension slowly began to dissipate. Maggie's apology was a start, but trust would take time to rebuild. For now, I was just grateful that the truth was out in the open and that Tom and I could move forward without the shadow of sabotage hanging over us. And so, the night ended not with a bang, but with a tentative truce. Maggie's devious plan had been unraveled, and while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, at least it was now free of her well-intentioned but wildly misguided shenanigans. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories. 5. How I survived the ultimate sibling betrayal. And finally, the most surprising lesson of all, sometimes, the worst experiences can lead to the best outcomes. Maggie's wild plot forced me to re-evaluate my relationships, my boundaries, and my priorities. It brought Tom and me closer together and made us stronger as a couple. It also taught me that I'm more resilient than I ever imagined. So, while I wouldn't wish a sibling sabotage on anyone, I can honestly say that I came out of it a better, wiser person. After the family dinner showdown, things didn't miraculously become perfect. Trust takes time to rebuild, even among family. Maggie and I agreed to attend therapy together, something I never thought we'd do. The sessions were tough, they peeled back layers of old wounds and buried grievances. But slowly, through honest dialogue and professional guidance, we started to understand each other's perspectives. Maggie admitted that her actions stemmed from a deep-seated fear of losing me, mixed with old resentments toward Tom. It was no excuse, but it explained her irrational behavior. Tom, ever the patient partner, supported me through these revelations. He proved his commitment by standing beside me during every twist and turn of this familial drama, never once wavering in his love or dedication. We had long, heartfelt conversations about our future, our families, and the kind of life we wanted to build together. Those talks reaffirmed that we were meant to be, not because we were perfect, but because we were perfectly willing to work through our imperfections. What's more, this ordeal taught me the importance of setting clear boundaries with everyone in my life. The old me would have placated Maggie to keep the peace, but the new me was done being trampled over. I learned to say no firmly yet lovingly, and to protect my space and my peace of mind. Surprisingly, Maggie respected these new boundaries, perhaps realizing that our relationship could only survive with mutual respect in place. Forgiving Maggie was, without a doubt, the hardest part. I had to make peace with the idea that forgiveness is more for the forgiver than the perpetrator. I did it in small steps, first by letting go of minor resentments, then by tackling the bigger issues. I kept reminding myself that forgiveness didn't mean letting Maggie off the hook, it meant freeing myself from the chains of anger and bitterness. But let's not gloss over the necessity of self-care in all this. I dove into activities that made me happy, like painting and hiking. I reconnected with friends I had neglected in the chaos. I also indulged in the occasional spa day, relishing the moments where I could forget about Maggie's betrayal and just focus on myself. These acts of self-care were crucial in restoring my sense of self and sanity. Perhaps the biggest revelation was how this whole fiasco redefined my perception of resilience. I discovered strengths I didn't know I had and found out just how far I could bend without breaking. In conclusion, surviving Maggie's ultimate betrayal wasn't a walk in the park. It was more like a trek through a minefield while blindfolded and wearing clown shoes. But emerging on the other side taught me invaluable lessons: trust, communication, instincts, boundaries, forgiveness, self-care, and resilience. These are the lessons I learned from my sister's wild plot to wreck my marriage. And if I can survive that, I truly believe I can survive just about anything. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories. Conclusion: surviving my sister's ultimate betrayal was a harrowing experience, but it also provided invaluable lessons in trust, communication, and resilience. Through the chaos, I learned the importance of setting boundaries, trusting my instincts, and prioritizing self-care. While my sister's wild plot to wreck my marriage tested my relationship and my sanity, it ultimately brought me closer to my fiancé and made me stronger. In the end, the ordeal taught me that even the most challenging experiences can lead to personal growth and deeper connections. Thank you for joining me today on Sister's Wild Plot to Wreck My Marriage, forcing things to patch up with my ex. These stories are a reminder that reality can sometimes be stranger than fiction. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll dive into the world of secret online affairs. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep your eyes and ears open, because you never know what secrets might be hiding in plain sight.